Hello, welcome everyone. We will get started in just a moment while we let folks join us. We're so glad to see you. Welcome. Get comfy, join our chat. People are still joining, so I'll give it another couple of moments. Great turnout, guys. We're really excited to have you here with us for such an important topic presented by some amazing individuals. Okay, it is 1 after, so we will go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. I'm Josie Badger, and I am the director of the RAISE Center, and RAISE works as a project under the RSA, and we work with parent centers who are serving families and youth who have disabilities who are in the transition age. Over the past few years, and especially since the pandemic, we have seen more and more need regarding mental health services and supports around youth transition age. But one of the huge gaps is supports for transition age youth who have other disabilities plus are dealing with mental health or mental illness challenges. So it's really good to see you all here today. I'm really excited to have Dr. Terry Brister here to talk to you about some of the topics we've been working on, and just really excited for you to be able to have these new resources at your disposal. So next slide, Miriam.
Good afternoon. My name is Miriam Aliso from the RAISE Center, and I am here to walk you on how to interact with some of the Zoom features. Please use the Q&A to ask questions to the presenter, and use the chat feature, the chat box, if you have any technical issues. We have interpretation to Spanish. Para acceder al canal en español, van a ver en la banda o cinta negra un globo que indica interpretación. Haga clic allí y luego seleccionan español y oprimen donde dice Mute Original Audio. Esto último filtra completamente la señal en inglés para que puedan escuchar con claridad a nuestro intérprete Guillermo Cordero. We also have a closed caption provided by Zoom. If you see CC over there, click over there and then the closed caption will show. We also have Dina Hayes. We have an interpreter for American Sign Language. Dina, to select interpretation, even though we have it over there for you, please click on the 3 dots on her name, Dina, and you will be able to pin Dina. Okay. Next slide.
All right. I guess we're ready to go. Thank you so much, Miriam, and thank you, Josie. It is my pleasure to be with all of you this afternoon, and I want to begin by thanking you for joining us. To have an August afternoon when school's getting ready to start and all of you are here, I think it speaks to just how important all of these issues are. So I thank you for joining. And thank you, Lauren and Josie, for inviting me to be on this webinar today, and Lauren, for all of the work and time that you put into helping me pull this together. Let me tell you just a bit about NAMI. Again, I'm Terry Brister. I'm the Chief Program Officer at NAMI. The things that live in my space are NAMI's education and support programs, also all things research. I actually met Lauren through a program of ours called NAMI Basics, a course for parents or other family caregivers of children with a mental health condition. And it's in those roles, in those different things that I'm involved in, it's always through the eyes of a person with lived experience. I am a parent. of 2 children with mental health conditions, and I'm the grandparent of a grandson with Down syndrome. So have seen all sides of the spectrum. And like many of you, or most of you, if not all of you on this call, we can know things all day long, but living them and applying them to our personal life is a whole nother story. So again, thank you for joining us here today. And NAMI, for any of you who don't know, is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. We are the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization. We have about 650 different NAMIs across the country. So we're not everywhere, but I like to tell people we know people everywhere. So what you're going to hear me talk about, one of the things during the presentation today, is the importance of finding support for yourself and being able to connect with other people who've been there, done that, and can help you with some of this. So the title, the title for this session, Society Says Adult, we say they're still our children. There's no magic switch that flips when the person that we care about turns 18. In some states, decision-making can change as young as 14, but there's nothing that happens overnight that makes them a different person or that makes us a different parent. We don't care less. We don't love them less. We don't worry less. We don't feel less responsible when they become legally responsible for their own decisions, including treatment decisions. They'll always be our child. And that's one of the reasons that family members, caregivers frequently are stigmatized for being overbearing, over controlling. That's something we're always dealing with. The main objectives for the presentation today is to talk about the different changes that you can be prepared for as a typical child transitions. And when I say child, please know I'm not talking about I'm talking about anybody that you've been in a role of helping them make their own decisions. So please don't be offended. Sometimes I'm talking adult child, but it's the person that we're involved with. But we're going to talk about typical transitions and how challenging and stressful those can be. And then we're going to move quickly into how that process intensifies if the person that you're concerned about experiences physical conditions, including mental health conditions, and frequently both, how that can all get complicated. And then most importantly, what are some resources? What's out there? What do you need to be aware of? What are some tools for your toolbox that you might be able to use? When we do this in person, we ask people, about what their expectations are. So I just wanted to invite you while we're talking, if you want to post, something in chat about what you're hoping to get out of today, or if this is a personal concern for you, if you're here because of the work that you do, just anything you'd like to put in there that we can, and we'll go through and process that a little bit at the end of the presentation. And I believe Miriam covered this, but we will have time at the end for Q&A, and we'll respond to the questions that are in the chat box, as well as taking live questions at that time. So I want you to think about why you're here, and again, hope that you'll find what you need, or at least get some ideas about where to go look for what you need, because sometimes you're not even really sure what the question is. You just know you don't have everything that you need, or that you're not able to find it. So what transition are we specifically talking about? We know that transition is a process of change. It's a period of time where there is some kind of metamorphosis, as with the butterfly, some kind of change that's going on where we pass from, or something passes from one state to another. Life is full of transitions, and they all involve discomfort. Even when the transitions are good, there's frequently anxiety. Change can be stressful, and it can be uncomfortable. Think about the butterfly. It's uncomfortable to be cooped up in that cocoon, but they get out and it's like, okay, this was all worth it. But you don't get a memo. You don't get anything laying all this out for you very clearly. And the unknown is also stressful and makes it more complicated. Think about your own childhood or adolescence, or going to college or your young adulthood. I don't know about you guys, but mine wasn't the smoothest in the world. People will, frequently people will say, oh, don't you wish you were back in high school? Or don't you wish, I'd like to be a kid again. I have no desire to be back in high school. I have no desire to go through those first years of college again. It's stressful. It was a lot to it. Again, it's even when it's good stuff, good transitions, it can be stressful. And things can be even more challenging, again, when there are mental health conditions, other physical, and I say other physical because mental health is a physical situation as well. But it just gets more complicated when there are other challenges going on. I want you to look at the guys on this slide. And this could be the same individual later when he's grown up, but I want you to think for just a minute. Do you think there is a difference in how much control the young child on the left, how much control his family or how much influence his family has over his decisions, particularly his care decisions, versus the gentleman on the right, who probably is 18, looks like he's just graduated from high school, going to college? There's a difference, right, in the amount of control that the family, or influence is probably a better word than control. And our level of control changes over time, and the changes become drastic as they start reaching the level of maturity or majority, whatever the term is in your particular state. And again, in doing trainings with NAMI Basics, I've run across states where as young as 14, an individual could have input on, not just have input, but could be the final say on their treatment decisions. We're not the same parent we were either. So again, if these are pictures of my son, and they're not, my son used to be on here and we swapped him out. But if these are both my son, I was a different parent when my son was 6 years old than when my son was 18 or 19. So we're all in different places and going through different things. Most importantly, one of the biggest changes is the world looks at you differently as a parent or a caregiver when you have an adult child or a child who's approaching the age of majority versus a child who very obviously is a child. The world looks at you differently. You're no longer in the driver's seat, and sometimes they won't even let you in the garage where the car is parked. That's just the way it is. And it can be a shock for many of us. I recall years ago, this is when I was working at mental health centers, working with a family whose daughter was in a residential or an inpatient psychiatric treatment facility. She turned 18 while she was there. And literally the facility wouldn't give the parents any information. She had actually eloped. The day that she turned 18, they told her she could leave if she chose to. And it was about a month before they found her. So again, things can happen quickly. And it can be terrifying. So we don't want that to happen. We want people to be ready. And it's one of the reasons we started talking about transition issues. We talk about it in the NAMI Basics program, because for many people, when their child is young, the last thing they've thought about is how this is going to change. They're trying to get through next week, much less through thinking through years down the road. Some transitions can feel like you're walking off a cliff. And if there are complicating conditions going on, it can sometimes feel like we're being pushed over the cliff. Things like, and I want you to think about some typical transitions, things that we don't really think about as a huge deal: home care to preschool, elementary to junior high, learning to drive, getting a driver's license, high school to college, living at home to an apartment. And relationships with partners. Our loved ones' relationships get more complex as they get older. So again, all of those have a level of stress involved with them and bumps in the road. But as a parent of a child who is experiencing a mental health condition, or another type of disability, or again, frequently both, it can feel like you're throwing the child off the cliff as well, like you're leaving them out there without a safety net when you realize you're not able to help with so many of the things you've helped with before. Things like moving from home to a residential treatment center, moving from a residential treatment center back home. Juvenile court can become an issue. Many of the conditions that we think about, especially with mental health conditions, one of the big symptoms are behavior problems. So all too frequently, there is some law enforcement entity that's involved. Treatment decisions, including the decision to stop treatment. That's one of the big changes. As parents, we know our kids aren't necessarily ready to make those decisions, but the outside world says it's time. So we have to be ready to have those conversations. As parents, we're responsible for everything prior to 18 and very little legally after that, unless there's something special that's in place, like a conservatorship or something like that. We can become invisible to the outside world. Again, think about the family. That's the most drastic example I've ever seen in my years as a clinician, or even with NAMI, where parents had signed for their 17-year-old to be admitted to this facility. They checked on her every day. They talked to her therapist every day. And then on her birthday, conversation stopped. It never occurred to them that their daughter had actually left until they went for visitation, and that's when they found out. So again, it can be bad. So think about what age your child is now, or the child that you're concerned about, or the age of the children that the young adult, the youth that you typically work with. If they're older than 26, then most of what I'm saying is probably going to be old hat to you. You've been there, done that, probably didn't get a t-shirt. If you did, it's probably worn out. But much of this won't be news for you today, but hopefully there'll be some resources that you can share with the people that you're working with. If your child is younger than 14, then good. You've got some time to get your things together and to process all the changes that will be coming your way at some point, and have some tools to help with that. And if you're somewhere between 14 and 21, 22, 23, then you are right where you need to be, because you're right in the middle of this, or you are just walking into it. So again, this can be helpful for you, I hope. So let's talk about some of the challenges and of transitions for typical youth. And at NAMI, we make a point of not saying normal. I have a colleague who says normal is a setting on a clothes dryer. We don't talk about normal and abnormal. We talk about typical. What's typical? What's usual? So when we talk about some of the challenges for typical youth, it's things like managing money, prioritizing, managing time, making good decisions. Teenagers don't make the best decisions in the world. Their brains aren't fully done yet. They just literally, not figuratively, but biological. Their frontal lobe is not fully formed yet. They just aren't able to make great decisions all the time. And changing social relationships, like we talked about earlier. Again, those are changes that everybody goes through. Everybody goes through. So when you think about challenges think about some of the challenges that you've already experienced with your child. You don't have to put them in the chat, but just think about them. Two of the biggest, most stressful ones for me with one of my children, my son, who's the youngest, had anxiety from the time he was in about the 3rd grade. So we've dealt with this his whole life. My daughter was the outgoing overachiever, all the things in high school, went off to college and became severely depressed. So for both of them, but for different reasons, those college years, those young adult years were the most stressful at our house. For him, I was terrified for him to go to college, because I had this fear that he would be curled up in a frozen position in his dorm room. For my daughter, it became stressful when she was 300 miles away and was going through depression and I wasn't there. The other thing that was super stressful with both of them was driving, just for a variety of reasons. Again, the not making good decisions, not having the best judgment in the world, and being in control of a 4,000-pound vehicle. So just think about some of those typical things that you've experienced with your child. The additional challenges of people who are children, youth, young adults who are also experiencing a mental health condition are tremendous. They face multiple challenges associated with having something going on in their brain that interferes with their mood. It interferes with the way they interpret things, the way they hear things. They may perceive us as saying something different than we're actually saying. And again, they don't make the best decisions in the world. They also are facing a lot of things that typical kids don't face. Navigating multiple programs, usually service delivery systems. Again, healthcare, mental health care at school, special ed, IEPs, all of those things. They're also faced with making decisions as they get older about what to disclose and not to disclose. That's something we hear frequently when kids do get out of high school and they're ready to go to a junior college or to a work program. How much do they disclose? How much do they tell the people at their new school or their new community college or wherever it is they're going? Independence versus interdependence. They need us. They need us, and we want them to need us, but they don't want to need us. Okay, that's the same as with any typical youth. They want to be independent. They want the same things everybody else does at those ages. They may qualify for adult programs, or they may not qualify for programs that they were eligible before they turned 18. There are some services that aren't available once the child turns 18, that just stop automatically, that there's not an equivalent on the adult side. One of the years ago, I heard somebody refer to that transition age, that 18 to 21 age, as a black hole, because it's just everything changes and you really don't know where to go or where to look. Finding the services for their changing needs can be a challenge. If they're on medications, that can complicate things even further, because again, having the responsibility of taking meds, getting injections, whether it's a mental health condition or for a different physical condition, it's making those decisions and being more responsible for themselves. And last but not least, the stigma of having something different about them. Okay, the stigma's there. And whether it's just a mental health condition or whether it's several co-occurring conditions, the stigma is real. It makes everything more complicated. If we look just for a minute at mental health conditions specifically, we know that 50% of all mental disorders, mental health conditions, are present before the age of 14. That doesn't mean everybody's diagnosed by that age. That means that there are a number of studies done when you ask people, how old were you when you first started having difficulties? And 50% of the people in the US say it was before they were 14 years old. 50% of students with mental illness drop out of school. They don't even finish. And when I say mental illness, I'm not talking about just what we think of as serious mental illnesses, schizophrenia, bipolar, mood disorders. We're talking about the whole spectrum. Post-traumatic stress disorders, anxiety disorders, things that people think of maybe not being that big of a deal for a youth or for a young adult even. What we know, and I learned this very quickly with the NAMI Basics program when we were rolling it out, is the younger the child is symptomatic, the younger the child is having difficulties, the more stigma there is for the family. The more of a tendency there is to think that it's something the family did or didn't do. Because kids aren't supposed to be depressed, right? Kids aren't supposed to be anxious. The childhood is supposed to be carefree. The stigma it's kind of disproportionate. The younger the child, the higher the stigma. And stigma is something that's regarded as socially unacceptable. You all know what that is, but I wanted to put that out there. And again, I've already talked about the fact that the younger the child is, the greater the stigma is. You see that last bullet on the slide, unemployment rates for people with mental illness are higher than their peers. So again, additional challenges above and beyond the challenges of just growing up. And this is a map that when we're in person, in a real place, and everybody's all together, that I usually put on a flip chart, that you think about this transition period as the child moving from family land, where the family was kind of in charge, making all the decisions, over to adult child land, right? Where the parent is a partner, we hope. We hope the relationship continues. That's the goal, but where the parent is a partner. And that water in between is uncharted. You know, our goal is that families can have hope, that they will get to the other side, that they will be able to build that bridge. And we know it's possible, but it's not easy. It takes work, and it takes all of us, like everything else we're dealing with our children. If you think about it, it's nothing really comes easy, but it's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it in the end. A big thing I want to emphasize here is that it's possible to grow up without growing apart. And that really is one of the primary goals, that that our relationships change, and we're able to, we as the adult are able to grow with our children, and able to, our number one job is theoretically to help our kids not need us anymore, right? To raise them to be independent enough that they can take care of themselves, take care of their own families, their own households. And that requires transitions for us as well. So keep that in mind. There's a whole lot more to this transition business than just services and treatment decisions and school decisions. A lot of it is transition of our mindsets, of relationships in the house, in the family. Think about what are the most worrisome parts for us as parents. Let's talk about us for just a minute. Okay. For me, some of them are, how will I know if he needs me when I can't see him every day? Because he's not going to tell me, right? He barely talks to me here in the house about how he's doing. He's not going to tell me when he's 100 miles away. How will I know if she's taking her medication? That was a big concern with my daughter in the antidepressants. What if they decide to drink or use recreational drugs? What will that do? My son's anxiety got so much better when he went to college because he found alcohol. And I lived in fear for 3 solid years that there was going to be a bad event with the alcohol. I'm afraid that he can't make it on his own in a dorm. Those are concerns. We worry about them. So think about some of your own feelings. And they typically all boil down to fear. Whatever it is that you've been through on your own, or might have come into your mind as I was talking, it all boils down to fear. It's the root of every thought that we have about watching our child head out into the world on their own, whether we're sending them off to kindergarten, to college, or to a psychiatric facility for the first time. And I'm here to tell you it's no better with grandchildren. I have a 3-year-old granddaughter, and I was sad to learn that the anxiety is just as high with them. And we do know that many of us are raising our grandchildren. I've run into so many grandparents across the country who are taking care of grandchildren because their children, their adult children, aren't able to for one reason or another. So how do we prepare? I've spent a lot of time talking about what the it is, what transition is, what that black hole is like. So how do we get ready for it? And if you look at this cartoon, I just like it. It's about how we treat each other. Take the time to connect. It really is about, like so many other things in life, having an idea ahead of time of what to expect, what you need to prepare for, and then having some tools to help you get through it. People have gone through it just like you before, and they've survived. Some have even watched their children thrive, right, by themselves and living independently. But again, we're going to be sharing some tools with you, and the documents, I'm going to be talking about several documents while over the next few slides. And I understand that these are all available for you to download at the website where you registered for the webinar. And they're going to put something in the chat shortly for you to be able to download them as well. So want you to know they're coming. There, I think, are 8 different downloads that we'll have for you. So some of the tools that we're going to be talking about are a prevention planning for transition document. You know, it's basically, what do you need to think about and when do you need to start thinking about it? An action plan, timeline, and checklist. How do you track it? How do you keep up with what you're doing? A youth self-assessment. What is the youth? What is the young adult? What do they want? What are their priorities? What's important for them? A family and parent assessment, because frequently, I would say most of the time, actually, we're not on the same page. So it's important to have a conversation, to be able to connect. Like that cartoon was talking about, we got to know where we are. You got to know where you are before you can figure out how to get where you need to go. And those 2 assessment tools can be super, super helpful to getting the conversation started. So what is prevention planning and why do we need it? Who needs to be involved? When should we do it? What does the plan look like? The prevention planning is, think about it as advanced directives. It's not anything as formal as an advanced directive or as formal as a power of attorney, but think about it as a process of, it describes the process of prevention planning, including who will be involved at which step, why they're going to do it, when they're going to do it, and what the plan should look like. And it's never too early to begin the planning. And again, there is one of the forms that's available at the link is a 2-page prevention planning checklist. It tells you what it's all about, what it looks like. There's also a handout called Campus Mental Health, Knowing Your Rights. It lists 7 different questions that you need to think about, that you need to pose, you or the child, your young adult, or both of you should pose to the dean of students if they're getting ready to go off to college, even if they're going to a community college. And the question includes things like, have staff and faculty received adequate training to identify the specific support that students experiencing special conditions or that they need? Are there mental health services available on the campus? Are support services available for families of students? Have students received training and information about how to recognize warning signs in themselves and others? Basically, you want to do a little interviewing of the college to see how ready they are to deal with the situation that your adult child is facing. And you have these conversations with your student there with you. You're not having a conversation about them. Nothing about us without us, right? You're doing this together because you're helping them navigate this together. Remember, you're helping them grow up, not helping them go away. So there is also, again, something called the action plan timeline checklist, and it literally looks like a checklist, okay? It's got things you need to think about. You know, you can write NA. I mean, it helps. I'm all about lists. So this gives you ideas about the kind of things you need to be thinking about and checking off your box, knowing that they've been addressed, you have a plan for it, or you don't need to do it. You'll also be getting a list of federal programs that are available to help during this time. Look, Sweet Lauren has typed all the different handouts you're going to be getting, so I'm not going to read them to you. But you'll have access to a variety of tools and resources that you can go. It's kind of all been collected for you, if you will, to make it a little easier. One of the things we say at NAMI is you can't know what nobody's told you, right? And we don't get instructions on these things. You know, we don't get manuals when we have our children. We don't get a lot. You know, we get patted on the back and say, good luck to you. Yep, bless your heart, That's what we say in the South. Bless your heart. So we've put together a compendium of a variety of resources that hopefully will be helpful to you. And we want to get the youth's perspective as well. What are their goals and dreams? What do they want to do after high school? Where do they want to live? How do they plan to make these dreams happen? And something that's probably not news to any of you on this call is we really want to be strengths-based. Everybody has strengths. We all do. Sometimes you really have to dig, especially if you're frustrated and they're frustrated and you've had a really tough couple of days or a really tough couple of weeks. But everybody has strengths, and that's always the best place to start. So again, there's the assessment, getting the youth's perspective, is one of the documents that can help you have those conversations. You know, one idea is to have the person that you love and care about fill out their form. Let them do their own self-assessment. You do yours, and then compare notes. And make a point of letting them know how typical it is. You know, I went to this webinar or I read this whatever that says it's typical that we see things differently. That's the way it is. That's typical that we see things differently. We have to find that common ground and find that place where we meet each other. So getting the family's perspective, again, your perspective is just as important. The process, the assessment form is very similar, and I've already talked about the fact that you can, one idea is to complete them separately and then get together and talk about what you both came up with. That's probably the easiest way to do it, so that you've had some time processing your own stuff before you come together to talk about it. They're, you know, some of these are multiple pages. They're not that long. It's the bullets that make them longer. They're relatively simple, but it's things you need to think about. You know, what are the parents' goals for the education and employment? What about housing? You know, do you want them to? And some parents do. We have I mentioned my grandson who has Downs. He's 22 years old, and his mom, my stepdaughter, is she's not interested in him living anywhere else. She wants him to live at home. It's been the older he gets, the more of a challenge it is to find supported employment situations for him. Transportation becomes a big deal. So at 22, still very much facing the transition challenges with him. What's your assessment of their ability to reach their goals, or your goals for them? This is often one of the most mind-opening, or maybe surprising. This frequently is one of the biggest disconnect, if you will, where you see the biggest dissonance, where maybe the teenager wants to go to college, they want to graduate, they want to go to law school. Mom and dad just want them to do something else, maybe go to junior college, maybe complete a work-study program of some sort. It's coming to some kind of a, what's realistic? Where should we start? So that parents aren't helping set up their loved one to be disappointed, but also so that they're not dashing their hopes and dreams either, because none of us really know which is going to work best. We don't. And it's all about coming to that middle ground, and the family being able to support the person to be able to do the best that they can do and to fulfill what they want for their own life. Again, if you don't remember much of anything else, remember nothing about us without us. This whole webinar is this is not about what you can do to your child or your young adult. It's about tools that you can use to help work with them, to help engage them, to help work together. So you can continue to do what you do best, loving them and caring for them and helping them, set them up for the best success possible. And to do that, you have to know where to look. You have to build a community of support. We frequently say that to people when they come to a NAMI class, that there's no These are not casserole conditions. These are not casserole illnesses frequently, whether it's a mental health condition or some of the other conditions that you may be concerned about, focused with, working with. It's not like when someone has surgery and the community brings them casseroles, maybe somebody mows your lawn, maybe somebody picks up your kids. These conditions are not like that. We have to build our own community of support. We have to find people who have experience with these kind of things to help give us hope, to help us know that it is possible. So we have to do that. And that comes as news to a lot of us too, where we think that the community is going to be out there for us, and it's just not. When you find your people, it's there, and it's more than there, but you have to know where to look. And, you know, places to look: NAMI, Disability Rights Services, Parent Training and Information Centers. I just got an email right before this webinar from the Mississippi PTI about something they've got going on. The special education director at your school, local vocational rehabilitation offices, local mental health centers, local attorneys that specialize in these type things, helping adults make decisions for themselves and knowing that everybody is safe and has what they need. And you need to find these things for yourself as well. Can't say that enough. We have a cartoon that we put in many of our education programs at NAMI, and it looks just like the handout that's in the back of the plane seat on the airplane. You know, it's a lot like putting your oxygen mask on. If you think about it, nobody ever pays attention to them, right? But they tell you if the cabin loses oxygen pressure, that mask is going to fall. And if you're traveling with a youth or an older adult, to put your mask on first, because you can't take care of anybody else if you can't breathe yourself. And that's so much the truth when we're caring for people who our loved ones who through challenging times especially, we have to remember to take care of ourselves. And we almost always put ourselves last. We just do. Can't say enough. Community of support. Find your people. They're out there. You just have to find them. It's possible to navigate the cliffs. You've got to find the natural bridges. You've got to look for the steps, because frequently there are steps there. You just don't see them. They're behind some secret door that nobody even told you about. I can't tell you how many people, you know, when they've come to a NAMI class or come to a support group, said, how come nobody told me about you? Again, these are instructions we just don't get. And there are so many resources that are out there, but you have to know where to look. I wanted to share this quickly because we're almost at the end, and then we'll have time for Q&A. And I'm terrible at jokes. I'm the world's worst. I always forget the punchline, or I do the wrong setup or whatever. So I'll probably mess this up if any of you have ever heard it before. It's not a joke, but it's a short little story. There's a man who has fallen down in a hole, and he can't get out. And a doctor comes by and says, can I help you? And he says, yeah, I fell in this hole and I can't get out. He writes him a prescription and throws it down in the hole and then walks away. Okay, what's that going to do for me? So then a minister comes by and says, hey, how are you doing down there? Well, I'm not doing well. I fell in this hole. Well, here's a Bible for you. And he gives him a Bible, and he walks away. Okay, person's still in the hole. So then the fitness guru comes by, right? And man gets excited, or person gets excited, and he thinks, I'm going to get out now. Here's somebody who's physically healthy. They're going to help me get out. They throw him an exercise ball and walk on. Okay, so he's by himself. He's got a Bible. He's got a prescription. He's got an exercise ball, but he still can't get out of the hole. So then somebody comes by from some advocacy organization, doesn't have to be NAMI. It says, how are you doing down there? Not doing real well. I can't get out. I've got all these tools, but I can't figure out how to get out of this hole. And the person jumps in with him. And he says, okay, now what are you doing down here? Now we're both stuck. And she says, no, I've been here before and I know how to get out. I'll help you. That's what I've really been saying throughout this, is there are people out there who have navigated these waters before. Nobody has the perfect answer for you. Frequently, there is no perfect answer, but there are people who've gone through the process of sorting this out for themselves. And we have so much to learn from each other, so much to learn from each other. And I will tell you, having been a clinician for a number of years, people pay so much more attention to me as a NAMI family member with lived experience than they ever did as a clinician. We've kind of earned our stripes, if you will. So think about that. So I always also like this slide to close out with. We've considered every potential risk except the risks of avoiding all risks. We can't avoid the risks. We can't. We want our children, we want the people we care about to be as independent as possible. School systems, mental health systems are set up with round holes and square holes. And gosh, if you're a triangle, you're in trouble, right? We're used to shape shifting with our child. It just gets more complicated as they get older. There are still tools, there are still resources, but you have to be ready for them to come so that there's not as big a panic when you run into those, when those milestones do occur. So again, be aware of that. You have to put the puzzle together for you to keep yourself and your family as whole as possible, because it really is more than just about you and more than just about the child or the young adult. I hope there's one thing, not going to ask you to share this. I hope there's something that you heard today that you either plan to think about doing, or to follow up on, or to download the resources and take a look at them. And hopefully there's something that can be helpful to you. Or to the people that you're working with or that you're concerned about. This is a first step. This is a start. Again, for some of you, this may be old stuff. You've been there, done that, but hopefully there's something here that can be helpful for you. And finally, there's a slide here that has just some links to things on the NAMI site that can be helpful. And frankly, for me, it's easier to Google something plus NAMI to find it, which is terrible. Our site is not the easiest in the world to navigate, but NAMI.org/basics. That's the course I was telling you about that's for parent of children and adolescents, that also covers some things about transition age youth. And it's actually available as a click-through, take on your own time format, as well as taking the course live. There's a crisis guide, navigating a mental health crisis guide, and then just the general NAMI site. And I did see where Lauren has put several links in the chat while we've been talking. And I don't know, Lauren and Josie, if you guys want to come off and moderate the chat. We really didn't talk about how you wanted to do this or the Q&A. Or do y'all want me to just look for questions in the Q&A?
Sure. Go ahead, Josie.
It was me, Lauren. You can start
Oh,
reading
I'm
the
sorry.
questions.
And do y'all want me to stop staring my screen now? Do you want me to take the slides down?
Yeah, we can read the questions.
We can read the questions or whatever's easier for you, Terry.
Either way, I just wasn't sure what y'all's usual format was.
Okay. I'll start reading. I'm going to read from the bottom. What resources can you recommend to assist to help a young adult with an eating disorder, mental health, that requires a higher level of care, but will not pursue enrolling in residential or partial hospitalization?
I am trying to think of the name. There is a group that has a ton of and they're a SAMHSA funded organization. I'll have to look that one up and get that back, Josie, to you and Lauren. Is that possible for you to share with the group, or?
Yeah.
What's the best? Because I'm blanking on who they are, but we actually refer to them from the NAMI website when people come to us and ask questions about eating disorders. One of the things to be aware of, and it's not something I got into in this presentation because it really wasn't particularly a part of transition age youth, but there's something called anosognosia that you hear about relatively frequently when people are talking about people with schizophrenia. It's the not really knowing how sick you are, not really wanting, maybe coming across as I don't want help, I don't need anything. But there's a component of many conditions where we really don't realize how sick we are. So sometimes it's not just that the person is being obstinate or being stubborn, but they may genuinely not, it's not just denial, it's more than denial, if you will.
Terry, is it ANAD?
Yes, yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
I'll put it in the chat.
That is it. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay, there's another question. What do you do when your child dropped out from the first year at college? Went missing for 2 weeks. College did not notify us. We found him and he's now detoxing at home from drugs. He's refusing psychiatry, but agreed to going to the Amen clinic, and getting his fractured jaw repaired.
First of all, I'm so sorry you've had that experience, and we hear it. That's, the one I gave, the example I gave of the person who was in inpatient treatment facility is not as common as the one you just shared, where a young adult goes missing from a college campus or goes missing from a job they took somewhere off, and sometimes aren't found for months or for years, and unfortunately frequently are found not doing well physically or mentally. So again, I encourage you to connect with NAMI. A NAMI family to family class would probably be super helpful for you. For the school, I would, when you're at a point that you're able to, I would probably share my feedback with everybody who would listen in that student services division, or the dean of students, or whoever it is in that part of your college. This happens just way too frequently, where families aren't notified that someone is missing. I'm thankful that you found him and that he is getting help now where he is. Don't have magic solutions, but it sounds like at least he's getting some help now. Would encourage you to learn as much as you can.
Okay, we have another one. In my community, we have a clubhouse organization for supports. Are there any other models for supported community living models for families navigating mental health challenges? And
go ahead, I'm sorry.
There's a website that they included here.
Yes, and I also see, before I answer this one, that Lauren put in the website link for Dr. Javier Amador's book, I'm Not Sick, I Don't Need Help. He also, Dr. Amador has developed something that he refers to as LEAP. Gosh, and I'm blanking on what LEAP stands for, but it's a really good process. But it's for it teaches techniques and skills for the family to be able to engage with the person with the mental illness, to meet them where they are, instead of saying, yes, you do have schizophrenia, yes, you do have an eating disorder and you need treatment. You can tell them all day long. They're not able to listen for whatever reason. So his technique helps people learn how to communicate again and meet people where they are. So back to clubhouses are phenomenal. They are phenomenal programs. And for any of you who aren't familiar, they are, if you walked into a clubhouse, you'd think this is organized chaos. That's how you know they're really doing what they're supposed to do. But they are designed for people with a mental illness or a mental health condition, to ultimately help them get back to work. They have what's called transitional employment placements, where it's more than job coaching, it's job sharing. But it's not that everybody has to go to work right away. They learn a variety of skills actually working in different units at the clubhouse. There are also things that are less organized. There's something called a living room model. These are available around the country, and they're more like drop-in centers that are for calming and relaxing. So if people just need somewhere to go and be, just to relax and be around other people, have some social interaction. Contacting the community mental health center in your area or the NAMI in your area are probably the best places to start to find out what's available closest to you. There was years ago, gosh, I'm dating myself. I think it was in 2003 or 2005. There was something that came out called the President's New Freedom Commission Report on Mental Health, the state of the mental health system in the US. And one of the findings of that report was that the biggest predictor of what type of mental health services were in your area was your zip code. We really don't have a mental health system in this country. We have pieces and parts, and some areas have better parts than others. So literally the simplest thing to do is contact either the mental health center in your area or the NAMI to find out what exactly, is there a living room? Is there a clubhouse? Are there other drop-in centers? There are a variety of things that are available. They're just not available everywhere in the country, unfortunately.
Thank you, Terry. Another question. 18-year-old son with ADS, anxiety processing disorder, who wants to go to college, and we are completely lost on where to go get any support. We tried developmental pathways and we're told his IQ is too high and there is no support. Any recommendations for Colorado are appreciated.
I certainly don't know. You can tell by my accent, I don't know anything about Colorado. I'm here in Mississippi. Lauren has put in the website thinkcollege.net. And Lauren, you may want to come off of mute and let them know what they'll find there. But literally it's going to be digging. And then talking with so it's one thing to find something on a website, but then it's going to be actually having a conversation with those colleges or universities to find out, what do you really do? You said you did all of this. What do you really do, and how do you do it to make sure that those services are there? But good for him for wanting to do it, and good for you for being ready to roll up your sleeves and do the work to help him find it.
Okay, another one that is more a comment than a question. I think that all of this is to say that transitions are all difficult, and preparations and planning includes normalizing asking for help when it's needed, no judgment. I really would like to promote positive preparation instead of foreshadowing a cliff, which only creates anxiety, stress, and sometimes paralysis from adequate planning due to fear of what's ahead. In my experience, compare it more to climbing a mountain as opposed to falling off a cliff. It requires planning one step at a time. It may be a challenge, but relying on others for assistance when needed will create a more positive experience.
Very beautifully written. Very beautifully written. And I agree with you completely. Completely.
Another question. I don't necessarily have expectations, but I am hoping to get ideas to help my 27-year-old. That was at the beginning of the presentation. College grad, but has had strokes and bipolar to transition to work and greater independence. Okay, I hope you did get some ideas. It was at the beginning of the presentation.
Also, Miriam, there were two more questions that came in. One said, just wanted to say Mississippi NAMI chapter is wonderful. They've helped so many families work with us, and the Mississippi Parent Training and Information Center. And then the other one was, what resources are available for someone with complex medical, mental health, and intellectual developmental disabilities?
That is a $1,000,000 question. There is one of the handouts that you'll find when you go to download these things is one on chronic illness and your mental health. It's so common. We've gotten more since the pandemic. Actually, COVID has put a positive light, if you will, on the fact that at the end of the day, everybody's just a person and we're all dealing with something. And in a way, it's a little more okay than it used to be to ask for help. And we get contacted on a regular basis from people from other disease states, if you will, multiple sclerosis, muscular dystrophy, or two that I can think of that have happened in the last month, wanting to create fact sheets together to talk about when the conditions are coexisting. So there are some resources out there, and I'll put my email up here at the end of the email as well, or Lauren, you can type it in if you want to. Don't ever hesitate to reach out to me directly. And I don't have all the answers. I'm the first one to say that I don't, but can help connect you if possible to see what is out there. And what was the other besides the co-occurring conditions? What was the second part of that, Lauren?
Intellectual and developmental disabilities thrown in the mix.
Yes, that what I will tell you, Mississippi is currently under a lawsuit for violation of Olmstead for using too much institutionalization for people, and I'm involved with the court monitor. And I will tell you some of the biggest challenges for people that are held too long in the state facilities are people who have development disabilities and mental illnesses. It's so hard to find resources. And even you can tell by the gray hair, I trained a long time ago, but we haven't come a really long way in terms of treating the person comprehensively. We still do a lot of treating in silos. Okay, we're going to have this group over here in this building work with you on your developmental disabilities. And then we're going to do your mental health over here. And then we'll have you see your physical doctor here in the middle. We don't do enough of that interdisciplinary collaborative care, if you will. So that's not a solution. It's just acknowledging that that's a problem, and it's terrifying. Possible, but challenging to try to be more positive. It's challenging to find services, and a lot of times, most frequently, it's whatever the most prominent symptoms are right now is where the person gets help.
See, we don't have any more questions.
All right. Well, thank you guys for having me here. And yes, and Lauren put my email in the box. Please don't hesitate to email me. And again, if I can help connect you with a NAMI or make a suggestion. Lauren, I remember the basics training all those years ago with you. You had a resource for everything. And it's so wonderful to see some things never change. You know where everybody is. So thank you, Josie and Lauren, for having me.
Oh, thank you guys so much. Thank you all for joining us today. There is, I believe, a survey that you will receive. Please, send your feedback. It's always really helpful. We are having our next webinar on parent centers and independent living and self-advocates in September. We hope to see you there. And thank you, everyone. Goodbye.